Peru's assault on justice, a chilling crackdown on human rights. Peru, a nation grappling with political instability and plummeting public approval, is witnessing a disturbing escalation of attacks on human rights and civil liberties. The latest blow comes in the form of a controversial anti-NGO law, effectively silencing civil society organizations and barring them from pursuing legal action against the state for human rights violations. This draconian measure, hailed by some as a necessary step, is widely condemned by human rights groups as a blatant attempt to obstruct justice and leave vulnerable populations defenseless against state-sponsored abuses. The implications of this legislation are profound and far-reaching. It effectively creates a shield of impunity for the state, allowing human rights abuses to fester unchecked. For marginalized communities already struggling for recognition and justice, this law represents a devastating blow, effectively denying them access to the legal recourse necessary to redress their grievances. This isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a broader pattern of government-backed rollbacks on fundamental rights and freedoms, echoing a chilling trend observed in several nations globally. The architects of this law paint a deceptive picture, characterizing NGOs as self-serving entities solely focused on personal enrichment. Lawmaker Alejandro Aguinaga, a prominent figure in the right-wing Fuerza Popular Party, spearheaded this narrative, accusing NGOs of exploiting international cooperation to line their pockets at the expense of Peru's poorest citizens. This cynical rhetoric, however, conveniently ignores the crucial role these organizations play in advocating for the rights of the vulnerable and holding the powerful accountable. The irony is particularly sharp given Aguinaga's own history, which includes allegations of involvement in the forced sterilization of thousands of rural indigenous women, a gross violation of human rights that underscores the hypocrisy at the heart of this legislative assault. This anti-NGO law isn't simply a technical adjustment. It's a calculated move designed to stifle dissent and silence critical voices. The timing is particularly suspicious, coinciding with the already low approval ratings of President Dina Boluarte and Congress, both hovering below 5% in recent polls. This suggests a desperate attempt to consolidate power by silencing opposition and deflecting attention from the government's own failings. The parallels with authoritarian regimes, where independent scrutiny is suppressed to maintain control, are stark and unsettling. The historical context of this law is equally alarming. It echoes the infamous 1995 amnesty laws that shielded military and police personnel from prosecution for heinous human rights abuses committed during the country's internal conflict, 1982-000. These abuses, including forced disappearances, torture, and massacres, were later deemed unconstitutional due to their violation of international human rights standards and the fundamental right to justice. The current anti-NGO law, therefore, represents a disturbing regression, a deliberate attempt to rewrite history and shield perpetrators from accountability. Fueling the narrative behind this restrictive legislation is the unsubstantiated claim that USAID funds are being misused for political purposes. This echoes a broader trend of anti-American sentiment and a rejection of international cooperation, exemplified by the significant reduction in U.S. foreign aid programs under the previous administration. This fear-mongering tactic serves to distract from the real issues at hand and further justify the government's actions. The timing of this legislation is particularly noteworthy given President Boluarte's ongoing investigations, facing accusations of accepting bribes and her alleged role in the deaths of nearly 50 protesters during anti-government demonstrations in late 2022 and early 2023. These allegations, which she denies, cast a long shadow over her administration and further fuel concerns about corruption and accountability within the government. The Peruvian government's actions are not only a violation of domestic law, but also a flagrant disregard for international human rights standards. The international community must respond swiftly and decisively to condemn this egregious assault on justice and civil society. Silence in the face of such oppression would be complicity. Peru's vulnerable populations, denied access to justice, deserve the unwavering support and solidarity of the global community. The fight for human rights in Peru is far from over, and the international community must stand in solidarity with those bravely fighting for justice against this unjust and oppressive crackdown. The erosion of democratic institutions and the suppression of human rights in Peru demands urgent attention and decisive action from the international community. The silence of the world is not an option. The fate of Peru's vulnerable citizens hangs in the balance.